Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. In today's video, I want to share with you guys the green SS2 Gohan list from Wild Resurgence that I shared with patrons last week. We're going to go over this deck list in today's video. I talked about in that article how there are many different builds you can end up going with this leader, but this is the one that I have found the most success with, and I'm going to share it with you guys today. Now, this deck is a little difficult to play. It honestly takes a lot of sequencing, which a lot of people's problem in this game is proper sequencing. So if you guys want to see me do a beginner's guide video on this, which I do want to do with more deck profiles, let me know. So basically what I'll do with that is like go through the mulligan, go through the turn by turn, where you guys can kind of get a better idea of the proper sequencing of a deck like this. Now let me know if you want me to do that by liking this video. This video gets to 100 likes, I'll know you guys want to see that beginner's guide video, and I'll go ahead and make that for some time this week. Again, let me know by liking the video and we'll do that. But now let's get into the main deck. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe and let's jump right on in. We start with our one copy of Hyperbolic Time Chamber. This is a pure 50 card deck, so when you pull Time Chamber out like your leader says at the start of the game, you'll be at a 49 card deck, and it'll be very, very consistent due to that. Now, I don't really lean into the Time Chamber shenanigans all that much, to be honest. In this build, I purely just use it to awaken and then kind of ignore it after that. But we'll talk more about that in a second. So we play 4 copies of SS Gohan showing the results training, and 3 copies of Goku showing the results training. This is purely, again, to get awakened. I don't play the Trunks or Vegeta that also work with Time Chamber, because while I think they're decent cards, they do hit for crit, they do draw a card, they do set up Z energy. I think it's a lot of deck space to contribute to an engine when there are cards that do either very similar or even better things. So I chose to include those in the deck versus Trunks or Vegeta. I don't think that those are necessarily bad cards. I just think they don't work in this build necessarily. That's just my opinion. But yeah, with these cards, we're playing 7 copies because we need to see at least one of either of them by turn 2. So we can use our Z battle card to get them underneath the Time Chamber, setting up our alternate awakening condition for turn 3. I think 7 copies of this is totally fine. 8 would technically be more consistent, but by the time turn 2 rolls around, you've either attacked your leader 1 or 2 times, getting a search, and you've probably played your 1-drop Krillin, getting another search as well. So you've had plenty of opportunities to find these cards typically, and again, only needing to see 1 by turn 2. I think 7 is pretty much fine. We do have the 4 copies of Krillin Battle Support, our cantrip for the deck, a very efficient form of Z energy. Speaking of which, though, it is a little bit tough to resolve that second auto to make the extra Z energy and draw the extra card, but I do like to open 2 copies of Krillin if possible. Like if I had 2 in my opening hand, I won't send 1 back. I'll keep both because it is a good play on turn 2 when we typically have 1 extra energy left over after stacking our Time Chamber. So by playing this on turn 2, the first one probably got comboed to Z energy, and by playing this on turn 2, I'm hoping to then resolve my Awakened Leader's effect the following turn, combo the Krillin, make that extra Z energy, get that extra draw. Just a little bit of a spoiler for the play guide and how I end up playing the deck. But yeah, it is very good in that regard, just solid Z energy. We only need like 2 Z energy in this deck typically, unless we're really leaning into Z deck plays. But yeah, this is our most efficient form of Z energy in the early game. We have 4 copies of Uneasing Awakened Rage. Now, I want to just mention that I do think this card is good, and that might sound super obvious to a lot of you guys, but there are a lot of people out there who are calling this card less than stellar, and the main comparison I have for this card is Android 17 Defending Friends, which is very similar because every time your opponent attacks after the first attack is negated, they have to lose a card from hand. In that case, it's a bottom deck. In this case, they make a Z energy, which, yes, is slightly worse than if they either discarded or bottom decked the cards. But even if they discarded, this would be open to like being countered by Deborah, which would not be all that great. Yes, making Z energy technically gives them more options in terms of Z deck plays, but you're still taxing their hand, which is very, very good. This card's incredible. It also can't be interacted with like Android 17 Defending Friends can, so that's like a give and take upside, right? 17 can be counterplayed, but makes your opponent bottom deck cards. This card cannot be counterplayed, but sets up your opponent's Z energy. So there's a lot of good give and take there. And honestly, I'd definitely rather set up my opponent's Z energy and not have this card be able to be stopped. That's my personal opinion. And while I'm calling this card good, it is totally true that you can lose the game even after activating this card, but that's when you run into a situation where your opponent's already so far ahead that them minusing 1 card from hand every attack isn't going to get you out of the sticky situation, right? So yes, this card does not automatically buy you the next turn, but it is still a really good card, whether you're using it as a singleton negate just to draw an additional card and lose no card advantage, or using it as the floodgate. This card is very, very good. I do try not to have to pitch an additional card to activate this for free if I can help it. Like if I fully have to tap out and I have a bunch of dead cards in my hand, sure, I'll tap out, then I'll pitch the extra cards to use Uneasing Awakened Rage because I couldn't have comboed with those dead cards anyway. But I do try to keep one open for this if I can help it. All right, then we have 4 copies of Goku Decision Made. This is our only 10k Goku in the deck. I find it's really all you need because once you get to your Z leader, you can just pitch it if you need to and then combo it from your drop with your respective abilities. And the counterplay is decent. Don't forget, you can respond to the play of unisons with this, so you can instantly remove 2 markers, and if your opponent happens to have a battle card on board, you can also snipe that. So this card is very, very flexible. We have 3 copies of our boss monster, Goku and Gohan Father-Son Solidarity. Perfect number. I mean, you can start playing it as early as turn 3 if you've gone second, but typically you'll wait to turn 4 to play this because you'll be on your Z leader, and then once you combo the Goku, the cost of combo cost of 1, you'll start critting your opponent's life, and that's where you want to be with this deck. This deck is very much an attrition based deck. You don't have like an auto win boss monster. This is not an auto win boss monster in and of itself. It is very powerful when it comes down, but it's probably going to take like 2 or 3 copies of this thing hitting the board. 3 might be a lot, but more so like 2 copies of this thing hitting the board to really just run your opponent out of those resources and be very aggro. And I do consider this to be an aggro deck. I don't really play this deck at much of a slow pace. I do try to hit very hard and very quick with more of the stuff we'll see. We have 3 copies of Kaioken the Furious, just very simple, 1 cost, make your opponent pitch a card, and critical. This is perfect when I'm talking about like the aggro version of this deck, where this thing hits for the crit, makes them lose the card, and then they probably have to lose another card to end up defending this. We have 2 copies of Fusamasu Deity's Wrath. Now, I really wanted to play 3 in this deck because this card is so easy to set up on turn 3, and theoretically it is a really good play going first because you can't play Father-Son Solidarity until turn 3 or going second, or turn 4 going first. But Zamasu is a little bit less good nowadays. While I do think red is going to become less popular, which overall is going to be a good thing for this deck, yellow can now answer this card super easily in the form of Goku Vegeta Ultimate Duo. So I'm a little bit hesitant to play 3 copies of this. If for some reason yellow sand based decks become less popular, then sure, this could become a 3 of, but for now I think 2 is kind of where it needs to be. 2 copies of Cooler Armed Force. This card is so insanely good, but I do find myself not casting it super often because the decks in archetype cards are just more often taking priority, and 2 energy in a green deck, as bad as it sounds, can be a little bit expensive. I like playing this card when I know my opponent doesn't have really good answers to barrier removal, because then this thing will just get incremental value turn after turn after turn. So those are situations in which I like to establish Cooler. Then we have 4 copies of Defending Father Paragus, just best super combo you can play in the deck. It's searchable by the leader and by Krillin, and it's just insanely good. 2 copies of Homicidal Clones. We've got some other negates in the deck, which is why I'm only playing 2 copies, and 2 copies might seem a bit low, but nowadays there are much more answers to token negates. I still think you should be playing them. I don't necessarily think they should be cut from your lists no matter what color you're playing, but you definitely don't have to play 3 to 4 like we used to in the past. Then we have 1 copy of Secret ID. This is a big reason as to why you don't need to be playing so many copies of Homicidal Clones, but it is still good to get that 2-for-1 negate whenever you can get the opportunity. But yeah, green has like a ton of removal, but this deck doesn't have super wide removal, which is why I'm going with the Secret ID. It is also a great card to play in response to your opponent using a token negate, so you can keep pushing for game in this quote-unquote aggro deck. 2 copies of Goku Fated Rivals, just for when you need that like on-demand barrier removal. It is also nice that he himself has barrier, so if you want to start like establishing a board to wear your opponent out via the attrition game, cards like Cooler and cards like Goku Fated Rivals are really good for that. And there's gonna be the random scenario against yellow where for whatever reason you don't get the opportunity to attack with Goku, Gohan, Father-Son Solidarity, and you won't be able to get that barrier removal in that case. So in that case, you do want to go ahead and just like slam the Fated Rival. Then we have 2 copies of Gohan Latent Power Unleashed. I'm not playing Piccolo Jr. Fated Rival because while it does pair with Goku and remove unison markers that way, we don't make a bajillion Z energy in this deck, so it doesn't always end up working out like that. And I don't want to play this 2-card combo where I can't really search the Piccolo. I can search the Goku, which is cool, but the Piccolo is going to be a little bit harder to find. And if I don't have one half of the combo, then it's kind of pointless. So I like having these cards that don't rely on each other and still work functionally well. 2 copies of Focused Breakthrough. I think you still got to have answers to Floodgates in the upcoming format. You got them in yellow, you got them in blue, so I think it's pretty important to have this counterplay. 2 copies of Goku's Kamehameha Deflection. This is kind of my split between Homicidal Clones and another negate. You know, obviously not counting Uneasing Awakened Rage as another negate, but this card popping a 4-drop is just so good. You've got like Piccolo the Infiltrator. You've got almost all the kind of intermediate threats in red. This card is very, very good. We have Cell Max. Okay, let's talk about this for a second. I talked about this in the Patreon article. I'm not playing Goku Peace Resolution, mostly because when the card is expected, it is much less good. If they just focus on negating your leader attack in anticipation of that SCR, it's not nearly as effective. Now, I know what some of you guys will say. Sure, you just don't combo it, and then the next turn you can go ahead and use it. Well, here's a couple, issues with that. What if they negate your leader swing the next turn? What if they kill you on the next turn? And you just sat there with an SCR in your hand and died, right? That's totally a possibility at the highest levels of competitive play. So basically, I was testing with my teammates, and they're doing that. They're focusing on negating my leader attack, so I can never resolve that SCR. So what I started to do was play Cell Max, where it's cheaper on energy. It does nothing to do with my leader. So if they want to anticipate Goku Peace Resolution and negate my leader, I can sneak this in there for 1 energy and go in there for that final quad strike. I have quite been liking it. I think at more of a local level, or like when the set first comes out, people are not going to expect that SCR, Goku Peace Resolution, as much. So you can probably get away with it. I don't think it's a bad card, but I don't know. It just seems like in competitive play, when people are expecting it, it's not going to be as good. Next up, we have 2 copies of Vegeta protecting his loved ones. This is a more recent addition to the deck. While it happens to just be good against blue, that's not the main reason I'm playing it. I'm more so playing it because it is a barrier cantrip so that I can make more efficient Z energy. And if I want to combo it off on defense to do that, Krillin, while an incredible card, doesn't have barrier, so the Vegeta having protection just makes it the next best cantrip in my opinion. And then wrapping up, we have 2 copies of Raditz Pulling Ahead. This definitely lends to the aggro variant of the deck. Very simple, 1-cost green 20k beater, and if it does damage, your opponent warps a card from hand, so they don't like get that plus from taking that life, and they lose a battle card on board. So oftentimes this demands your opponent like blocks or negates or something like that, and I have been quite liking it. Now let's take a look at the Z deck. We have 2 copies of Frieza Resurrecting Ambition. This is the non-archetype Z deck card that I find myself going into the most, which is why I'm playing 2 copies of it. We have 1 copy of 16 Final Wish. You need to play it in order to get Z Awakened. We of course have our Z leader here as well. This thing is absolutely incredible. We have 1 copy of Goku assisting his son. This card honestly kind of sucks, but like you have to play it to stack your time chamber. Sometimes, to be honest, I almost like rather just get down to 4 life if like my opponent's being a little bit aggressive with me and not have to waste energy on this card. The activate main to boost my Z leader only comes up if like the game is guaranteed they're tapped out, they can't possibly negate for some reason. Like maybe they're at 1 life tapped out, so they can't block or negate. That's the only time where it's like really good, but other than that, it's not so great. But we have 1 copy of Jiren the Immovable for when we need the unison removal, and it just got good protection in and of itself. And we have 1 copy of Goku Awakened by Rage whenever a 1-cost 15k Z battle card is relevant. But overall, guys, that's the deck list. Z deck is simple enough. This is my main board, again, for the aggressive variant of this deck. Other versions you could explore, there's definitely a bunch of different unisons you can end up throwing in this deck that do offer some merit, but they usually contribute to like more of a long game strategy, which I don't think this deck excels at. I do think you want to be trying to end games by like turn 4, turn 5, by basically just turning all your cards sideways, ripping your opponent's hand both by card effect and by making them defend. That's just my personal opinion. But anyways, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. Don't forget, like this video if you want to see a beginner's guide for SS2 Gohan. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.